This is Declan Spring. Welcome to the Mostly Real Estate Podcast. Okay, my guest today, I'm excited to have her on, is Micco. Megan is a Berkeley native and she's a Berkeley homeowner. She's a realtor with Compass here in Berkeley. And Megan and I are going to talk about some changes to some local Berkeley ordinances, point of sale ordinances. So if you're a Berkeley homeowner or you know a Berkeley homeowner, this could be useful to you. And obviously if you're a realtor doing any kind of transaction volume in Berkeley, this is going to be very useful info too if you're not already aware of it, and probably worthwhile sharing with your community of clients who have Berkeley property or may have an interest in buying property in Berkeley. Okay, without further ado, here's my conversation with Megan Micco. Megan, thanks so much for stopping by the studio today so that we can talk about all this upcoming change to BESO. How do you pronounce it?
I pronounce it BESO.
BESO.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's really always a delight to sit down with you, Declan.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, so you're BESO. You know, there's so many words that you see written, but you don't hear spoken
like
sometimes.
avid?
Yeah, avid.
What do you say?
I think I say avid.
I say the same.
So BESO.
BESO.
BESO and BESO. Well, we're going to talk about both of those things today.
Okay.
They're one and the same. And I value your input so much on this because I'm not a Berkeley resident. I'm a Richmond resident. So this is even closer to home for you. It's not just your community of clients in Berkeley, but it's also you. You and I chatted once before for a podcast I was doing for the Association of Realtors, and then I had a chance to meet you at your house, and I really enjoyed that and learned a little bit about you. But let's tell everybody about you, where you're born and raised, your connection to Berkeley, and all of that good stuff, and how long you've been a realtor, and how you got into the business.
All the juicy details.
All the good stuff.
Berkeley. So I'm a third-generation Berkeley resident. My grandma moved to Berkeley in the 1940s. My mom got all three of her degrees, including her PhD from UC Berkeley. I went to UC Berkeley. My husband went to Haas. We live 2 blocks from the university, so we're a deeply blue and gold Berkeley family.
Yes.
And in terms of the genesis for me getting into real estate, I was working in plaintiff law in San Francisco at a law firm called Leaf, Cabraser, Hyman & Bernstein. If you listen to NPR, you probably heard the commercials.
Yes.
And my broker called me and said, I think you would love real estate. I think you'd be great. You're great with people. You love contracts. Give it a year. If you don't like it, you can always go back to law school. In fact, if you have a law degree, you can just practice real estate anyhow.
Yeah.
And I figured I would give it a go. It was, just an exciting thing to try, and I adore it. I've never looked back. It's so great to work with so many smart agents and help buyers and sellers and get to look at gorgeous houses, and it's one of the joys of my life. I love it so much.
Well, you're really, really good at it. And of course, you were joined at some point by your husband, Jeff, who is just amazing, but he's not really as public facing as you. But I'm fortunate that I've gotten to know him a little bit in recent years. And when did you guys start working together?
Jeff joined my practice right around the time of the pandemic. Yeah. And so I needed help. It's just really hard to run a company yourself and do everything well. So marketing, operations, business development, it was too much for me. And so I knew I needed to make a strategic hire, and I started recruiting my husband.
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, he decided to join. But, I really wanted the decision to be wholly his.
Yeah.
He was being recruited for another sort of C-level job, and I did not want him to have any regrets. So I let him interview and go through the process, and he ultimately decided to go for better lifestyle. I put in a home gym for him, give him some really good benefits, and it's great working with him. But you're right, he's not as public facing. So many people just see him at open houses or on the social media.
Out, he does the work, but he's not as public facing. So briefly, for those of us who work with, a partner whom we live with and share a household with, what are the joys and what are the downsides?
That's such a great question. I know you can relate to this.
Yeah.
I have to be very intentional about not talking about work when I'm at the dinner table with our kids, because I want to really focus on them and be present. And again, we're excited about the industry and we love what we do. So it's really easy to allow that to spill over in sort of normal social time. And then I'm sure you experience this when you meet with friends or in a social environment. Everyone wants a market update. What's going on? What do you think about inflation? They want you to
right.
see around the corner for them and help them kind of figure it out.
That's
which
right.
is both a compliment, and it's hard to compartmentalize your work and have some amount of socialization without work.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, one of the benefits is I just run upstairs and have a quick call, or I send him a meet and we can just quickly discuss things. And
Right.
it's just really a joy. And to feel like we're aligned and our interests are together and we're working on this thing together for our benefit is just a special feeling.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You guys do it so well together.
Thank you.
You know, you really, really do, and it's great. And a lot of there's quite a few agents who, you know, partnered in business with their, you know, with their spouse or romantic partner. So it's amazing, and you do it really, really well.
Thank you, Declan. I think it's like cottage cheese. You either love it or you hate it. It's divisive.
Yeah, that's lovely. Well, let's first of all talk about what the heck is BESO.
Sure.
So it's the Berkeley Energy Savings Ordinance, right?
Correct.
It's had a few iterations over time. It was RICO at one point.
Do you remember RICO? I remember
do.
that at the very beginning of my career, but I don't think I ever did a transaction under RICO.
I should put on my glasses here so
Sure.
I can properly read what we have in front of us. Oh, it looks like, yeah, you're right. So it looks like BESO came in 2015 and replaced RICO.
Right.
Or RECO.
None of this is particularly clear on pronunciation.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, right? These.
Dealer's choice.
But let's establish this as a starting point for the conversation. So we're talking about BESO, which came in 2015, and it's peculiar to Berkeley. Berkeley has its own way with ordinances, don't you think?
People's Republic of Berkeley, yes.
The People's Republic of Berkeley, yeah. So we've all been dealing with BESO for a while, and it's had changes. Now, let me see. I want to go back. I think there was a point when, I do remember RICO. I believe with RICO, there was actually a requirement to get some very minor repairs to the property, like there was weather stripping on doors. And so there was a requirement to actually take some action.
Okay.
And then, so it was kind of interesting when BESO came out, right? Because there was no longer a requirement, you know, to scramble in transaction to do anything. We just needed to get the inspection or defer the inspection.
Right, to aggregate the data is the way I saw it.
Okay, yeah. How did you see? So how would you describe the current iteration of BESO?
So the way I present it to my clients is, you know, it's a point of sale requirement that requires an energy assessment. So you'll be given a number based on your assessment from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
And, you know, the less energy efficient would be 10. A perfect score would be a perfect 0. And, there's really no mandated improvements under the current BESO.
Yeah.
However, the way I present it is as a roadmap to energy efficiency. So what improvements can you make to increase the comfort of your home by sealing the envelope, reducing methane gas by taking out, anything that burns fossil fuels like stoves and furnaces and things like that.
Yeah.
And then you can choose at some point in your updates to do those things.
Yeah.
But as we know, and we're going to talk about, that's now shifting.
That's shifting. I think we always knew it was going to shift. I mean, now, weren't you for a period of time, weren't you involved with the Association of Realtors on like the green?
I'm a certified green realtor, and I was a 2023 climate action chair on the Bridge Association of Realtors, so heading that community that I took over from Arlene Baxter, who is our historic and climate maven that's been in real estate a long time, has so much institutional knowledge on the city, and is just a great resource. So if you have questions, she's a wonderful person to chat with, both about historic homes and energy efficiency. Really amazing depth of knowledge.
So you were fairly close to, the behind the scenes and advocating and just being involved in general and being part of your community and
that. But I think one of the main goals of the committee, at least when I was chairing it, was not only to raise awareness, but to encourage adoption and provide a roadmap. And if anyone's listening, if realtors are out there and they want information on how to do these things, my door is always open. Please call me. I mean, I really think the more we can work together on raising awareness and professionalism and talking about these regulations, the sooner we can all understand them and get on board, the faster we'll get to clean energy, which is so important for the environment.
Okay, a little side trip there, but let's get back to our base. So I think we all felt that at some point the city was going to, do something else or make another move. Now, I don't know how early on you were. When did you become aware of the upcoming changes?
That's a really good question. It's also murky looking back. Probably, I mean, I've been in touch with people at this city, so for a couple years now that it's been kind of brewing, and I knew changes were coming.
How much is a basic inspection these days?
I think they're about $500 to $600. There's a little bit of variance depending on how much the inspector charges, and then the filing fee is about $110. So
yeah, so normally nowadays, I think most of the time, sellers will kind of defer that to buyers, and buyers will pay for this.
As you know, everything is negotiable, and I think it depends a bit if it's a buyer's market and a seller's market, so those could flip-flop, but currently that's been the standard in our local area.
Thank you for pointing out that everything's negotiable, because that seems to get lost sometimes.
Nothing's set in stone. It's all just a negotiation, and hopefully a friendly one that leaves happy parties at the end on both sides.
Of course, and we all work super hard for that to happen.
Yes.
But you're right, in a market like this, in most of Berkeley, where there's bound to be multiple offers, buyers are looking to be as aggressive as possible, so they're going to pick up the cost of that inspection. And then I think within 6 months, am I right? Within 6 months of the property closing, the buyers, the new owners, are then going to get their property inspected for $600 or whatever.
Yes.
And then the city's going to get their information with respect to that particular property at that particular time. And that's
right.
it.
Yep.
And now things are going to change. This is all set to change on January 1st.
That's correct.
Right. So it's quite a list of changes coming in Bessa. How do you want to, let's walk through this. How do you want to do it? I'm going to hand the mic over to you, and let's start talking about what the changes are going to be.
Sure. So I think one way to think about it is there's now a point of sale requirement to actually make some changes to improve the energy efficiency of the house, where previously it was just to audit the house and get a score from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at a point system that the city has established, and there's going to be a deposit required from the buyers and sellers. It's a $5,000 deposit. Generally going to be split, I presume. So $2,500 from the seller, $2,500 from the buyer in escrow.
And that's only if the property doesn't meet the requirements.
That's right.
Right. Okay.
There are some properties for exclusions. I think it's under 800 square feet. Okay. Some new construction aren't subject to this ordinance. So there are some carve-outs, which would be important to talk to your agent about just to make sure you have the current information.
Right.
And then there's a point system. So you can do certain improvements, and they even give a suggestion on what might be the most cost-effective update to make for people that are concerned or have, fewer resources to dedicate to these upgrades.
Okay, so there's a minimum number of points required for compliance.
Correct.
And then you have like a menu of options.
That's right. And some may be pre-existing. Let's say someone already decommissioned the knob and tube. That's going to give you some amount of points. So you might not have to do everything. You might just need to add 2 or 3 points or to get to the full required 6. And so you get a menu of options. You can pick and choose. Okay. There's panel upgrades, solar chargers. There's a whole list. It's pretty extensive.
Okay. Well, the way it seems to be set up now, and this could change, and don't take this as gospel, but we're doing our best to give you accurate information. You should go to the city website. But it looks like our menu of options here and the points available for each item. We'll just go through it real quick. Heat pump water heater is 6 points, for example, or 6 credits.
So that would offer full compliance, just that one upgrade.
Just that one thing, right? So if somebody had an existing heat pump water heater, they would be compliant already. There'd be no $5,000 deposit.
And that's the one that's most cost efficient. So the first one that you named tends to be the most cost efficient.
Right.
And there's a bunch of rebates too. So people should look into rebates for it as well.
Okay. Where should they look for rebates?
Bay Rent is a great place. There's the Inflation Reduction Act. I should say I haven't checked on that recently. Hopefully it's still in place and they're offering rebates.
Yeah.
But Inflation Reduction Act and Bay Rent are 2 great resources.
Yes.
And I have a climate page on my website, so that's also something maybe we can link in the podcast so people can go to that.
Yeah, we'll get back to all of your contact info when we're wrapping up the conversation.
Perfect.
But so that's the first and best, I guess, most what did you call most cost effective, right?
Correct.
And then, but we do have a long list. We have a heat pump HVAC, which is also 6 credits or 6 points. And knob and tube replacement is 6 credits or 6 points, right? Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. So all of those individually are meeting the requirement. Panel upgrade or smart panel is 6 points. Solar PV and battery storage, 6 credits. And so those are all the 6 credit items or 6 point items. And then we drop down to like 3-point items, which are duct sealing and replacement, a bidirectional EV charger. That sounds interesting. There's EV chargers, 2 credits, induction ranges, 2 credits, window replacements, 2 credits, attic insulation, 2 credits, wall insulation, 2 credits, floor insulation, 1 to 2 credits, gray water system, 1 to 2 credits. Okay, so yeah, there's quite a lot you can select from, and it wouldn't surprise me if a good number of homes already have some of this stuff in them.
Absolutely. We pretty frequently see gray water systems. We see replaced windows, especially with our insurance challenges. A lot of sellers and buyers are getting upstream of decommissioning knob and tube and replacing them with modern Romex. So I'm optimistic and hopeful that some homes will have already gone through this to have met some part of the compliance.
An air sealing, 1 credit, pre-wiring, and 2 40-volt receptacles, a half credit per receptacle. So the new owners must complete the chosen upgrades within 2 years of the sale.
That's right.
With a possible 1-year extension. So it's maybe 3 years. And then I guess they hold on to that for the 3 years, right? The $5,000?
They do. And then actually what's an important and salient and kind of exciting point is once the work is done, the buyer gets the full deposit back. So they'd be refunded the full $5,000, even though they only put $2,500 in. So for the seller, their $2,500 deposit is just now a fee and a part of selling. That's just going to be a debit on their line item on their net sheet.
Yes.
So there is a benefit to the buyers to do the work, and potentially with rebates, you might be able to get a heat pump water heater for under that $5,000. So you could potentially net some money and then maybe do some other energy efficiency upgrades.
Right. And my first thought, and I'm sure most people's first thought, if you're listening to this right now, is we're all worried about tariffs and labor costs. I mean, those are 2 things that dovetail horrendously well in our industry, labor costs and and the tariff stuff. So if I'm somebody in Berkeley who's got a property, I think I'm trying to figure this out as quickly as possible.
Absolutely.
I think there'll be a lot of demand for existing inventory of any of this stuff.
Yes, and also we're going into hot season. So if you're thinking about mini splits or a heat pump for HVAC at your house, we're going into a peak season. So really planning ahead and making sure that you're booking ahead is smart.
That's very smart. I didn't know it, and this is what's great to have this chat. I wasn't aware of that $5,000 being fully refundable to the buyer.
Isn't that exciting?
It's exciting. I mean, so we have to explain that to sellers, though.
Yes, we do. If sellers know about this and they were considering improving the energy efficiency of their house, or let's say with changing weather, they want to put in air conditioning, they might consider heat pump technology, which is kind of perfect for California with our temperate weather.
Right.
So I think there are some use cases where sellers might do it upstream of selling.
Right.
But I think if it's a burden, either financial or because you're older, it'll probably fall to when they sell. And so,
because it's basically like a mandatory credit to buyers.
Correct.
That's what it is.
Correct.
Really.
And it's relatively inexpensive to do the $2,500 versus some of these projects are, decommissioning knob and tube on a 2,000 square foot house. It's going to be pretty costly.
Yes.
And so I think it's both about consulting with your agent and understanding what upgrades are going to make the most amount of sense.
Yes.
Can we make sure that we're making the property more attractive in terms of insurability? So all of these regulations really it's a Venn diagram of making sure they make sense and improve the property so you can, sell it for the best value.
Yes, absolutely. So, being a realtor in Berkeley has just become, as ever, it's increasingly more about bringing awareness, helping people understand and navigate well ahead of time, educating our community.
Yes.
As we do at the Association of Realtors, advocating, trying to allow for these ordinances not to be as least burdensome as possible.
Right. I mean, I put something on my Instagram recently that just was a survey. Have you heard about the Ember Initiative?
Yes.
And so 70% of people that responded to the poll, and of course this is anecdotal, it's not statistically relevant, said they'd heard of it. 30% had not. So I think this presents a great opportunity to just pick up the phone, check on your clients, ask if they've heard about it. Do they want to schedule a call to go over things? We always want to be of service to our clients, make sure that we're continuing to provide value. And I think that checking in with them and going over these things, is a definite value add.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody should be getting this information out as best we can. It's going to make life easier for everybody. And Lord knows we work on I mean, I don't know the next time I'll see you on the other side of the table, Megan, but it's always great when we run into agents who are well prepared for this kind of change. Let's just talk about exemptions really quickly. You did mention exemptions earlier, but also condos are exempt, obviously, and ADUs are exempt, which is interesting. What else could we talk about here? First-time home buyers in qualified programs are exempt. I have no idea what those qualified programs are.
There might be an income verification process for that. I'm not completely sure, but I think there might be an income component.
Okay. Yeah, so there's something there that people should dig in as they need to. So let's just do kind of a summary here again. So at time of sale for single-family homes, it's also in duplexes, right? Duplexes, and it's not coming into effect for triplexes for a couple of more years.
So that was my hesitation, right? There's a couple years until we get into kind of the bigger.
Yes, yeah, I think triplexes and fourplexes are going to be, which are still residential and not considered commercial yet, right? But the triplexes and the fourplexes, I believe, are 2028.
They're going to do a longer rollout.
We got a longer rollout. So again, sellers should have 6 credits worth of energy and resilience upgrades completed, and if they don't, then there's going to be a $5,000 deposit in escrow, and it's really just, let's call it what it is again. It's a mandatory seller credit to buyers, so that within 3 years at longest, those buyers can get up to 6 points worth of energy and resilience upgrades completed in their new home.
And the sooner we can get the information out, so thank you for doing the podcast, we'll rise the tide and people will be able to start to call. And, you know, one of the great things about our local agent community is they're so informed, so bright, so collaborative. And so hopefully people can start making phone calls to their colleagues and just saying, can you give me the 5-minute update? We can all, start getting on this soon.
Yeah, exactly. There's a couple other things that I think are interesting and dovetail with this. Well, we'll just talk about one that's not Berkeley specific, but it's out there. I think it's January 1st, 2029. There's the 9-county ban on, gas appliances.
Right, the Bay Area Air Quality District. I figure you're going to,
Right. Correct. So this is my understanding of it. It's fairly straightforward. January 1st, 2029, you want to get a new gas stove, you can't get a new one. I'm curious if there'd be a secondhand market. I don't know, but it could be there. I guess you can still get things repaired.
So, that's a really important point. So it's 2027 and 2029. Stoves, I believe, are not in the 2027, but the 2029. It's gas furnaces and water heaters in the first round.
Okay.
And it does not mean you need to pull out functioning items.
Right.
At the end of their economic life, when they've either gone defunct or you're considering an upgrade, that's when you need to do it. So after 2027, if your water heater went out, like mine did, and flooded the basement, we put in a heat pump water heater. So for everyone that's worried that someone's going to come and knock on your door and take your gas stove, that's not happening.
They can't do that. That would be an overreach.
Right. And then I would say, when I transitioned from a gas stove to an induction range, which I love, and if anyone has any questions about how to cook on it, reach out to me. I actually found a seller, through a colleague of mine, who wanted to take their range and had the exact same 36-inch space. And so we moved it into their space. So that stove did not go to landfill, and then I got my induction. So it was really, I think there's going to be a time of transition where we're not junking these items, because clearly that doesn't really solve the problem by just jettisoning a bunch of things into landfill. Right. So I think if we can be smart on how we can continue to use these items until they're no longer useful. But we're trying to improve air quality, and burning methane's not good for the environment.
Although I will say that I was talking to somebody recently who's always had an interest in having like a really, really nice chef stove, like a Wolf or Viking or whatever, just a really good one. And I said to them, you might want to get that in the next couple of years. They said, why? I said, well, here's why. And it's like, I'm going to go ahead and get that, because that thing will last for years and years and years. Yeah. And so, little things like that. But it dovetails well with this in Berkeley, this change to the BESO.
It does. It works nicely together.
Again, back to your Venn diagram idea. Like all of these things overlap and need to be considered carefully. But you kind of do need to sit down and kind of map it out, when it comes to what your home improvement should be.
Absolutely.
And timelines and all that stuff.
Definitely.
Okay, this is why another reason, I mean, I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I think we've covered it
I
pretty
think that's
efficiently.
efficient.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to understand that. And there's always a transcript available for the podcast. So anybody who wants to just read through it, they can. This will all be in the transcript. But then, okay, so I wanted to talk about something, the Ember Ordinance, which is very specific to Berkeley. And I really don't know too much about it.
Specific and spicy, and I think we're going to get some strident opposition from certain residents in Berkeley. So let's get into it and talk about it. It's also very confusing with the nomenclature. I'm not sure that you found it confusing, but I found it quite confusing between the fire zones and then the zone 0. And so let's try.
You're the expert here. I'm the pupil. I'm going to learn from you a little bit here, honestly.
Let's try to talk through it together so it makes sense. So maybe you want to kick it off and introduce it.
All right. So, well, what I'm reading in front of me, what I was able to find is that there's a Berkeley Ember Ordinance, and it's effective January 1st, 2026. Now, I'll just read from what I have. Berkeley is advancing wildfire prevention through Ember, which is effective mitigation for Berkeley's Ember Resilience Ordinance. And the regulation mandates the creation of a Zone 0, a 5-foot ember-resistant buffer around homes in high fire zones. Now that sounds good to me. I'm going to let you take it from here.
Perfect stopping time. So that is relatively clear. The part that's a bit confusing is that City of Berkeley currently has 3 different fire zones. There's zone 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
And there is a proposal to do zone 4, which would start at Grizzly Peak and go to Wildcat. And so that's going to be voted on whether we should do the zone 4 at the June 17th meeting. So
now, I mentioned a zone 0, so I don't want people to get thrown off.
Well, so this is why it's confusing. We should talk about it. So the city zones for fire risk are zones 1, 2, 3, and we have a proposal for zone 4.
Okay.
The zone 0 relates to a 0 clearance 5 feet around the property.
Ah, okay. So it's property.
So it's property specific.
Okay, got it.
So
got it.
For zones 3, you'll need zone 0 clearance. It's tricky because they're both called zones, but they mean different things.
Okay, got it. So zone 3 is, you said, what's zone 4?
Zone 4 is a proposal. So it has not been adopted yet.
Okay.
Right now we only have zones 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Most of Berkeley is in zone 1. You know, zone 1 goes from the water, let's call it up to Shattuck.
Yes.
And then zone 2 is from Shattuck, you know, maybe up to Grizzly. And then there's zone 3 at Panoramic Hill. It's a tiny little circle on Panoramic Hill.
Got it.
And then the proposed zone 4 would be from Grizzly Peak stretching to Wildcat.
Okay.
And what the city's trying to do with that proposed zone 4
Yes.
is to cause a fire break for the city.
Okay.
So that would be, again, this is confusing, zone 0 clearance. So no personal items, no shrubs, no tall trees, 5 feet around any structure. So we create a fire break, and that's the most stringent requirement would be zone 0, that you have to clear all that out. No fences.
Okay.
You have to have breaks so the fire can't jump.
Okay, now I hate to repeat myself, but just let me know if I got this right.
Sure.
The zone 4 is proposed from approximately Grizzly Peak back into Tilden.
Correct.
Okay, and zone 4 houses would need to be more resilient and have a zone 0 on the property, 5 feet of clearance around the house.
That's correct.
Got it.
And the city council vote, this is just a proposal.
Got it.
So they'll be voting on June 17th.
June 17th.
And then the compliance is supposed to be by the following January, which is why I say there's going to be strident opposition, because that's a very short timeline. And I think your question earlier about older people, people that don't have a lot of economic resources, I think this is a really interesting question about how we're actually going to get it done. That's a pretty short period of time.
That's very short.
I have concerns about how practical or impractical that timeline is.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've been chatting with some people in the hills, and there's a feeling of, you know, a lot of difficulty around how they're going to get it done. Contractors are really busy.
Right.
The city estimates this work is going to cost, I think it's about $2,900. But in many cases, you know, there's just not an availability of workers. So there's manifold challenges to meeting the requirement.
Yeah, and also, I mean, so the property itself, if you're in this proposed zone 4, talk to me about like roof structures, siding. I mean, there's cedar siding up on houses up there. There's all kinds of beautiful property, but very, very much Yeah, it's all wood. There's a lot of wood exterior.
Such a great question. I don't know much about siding, but I do know there's something about trees that they can't reach the roof line. They have to be a certain amount much taller than the roof so that the fire won't jump. You can have potted plants instead of a lot of shrubbery against the house.
Okay.
If someone just put in a wood fence, that's going to be really unfortunate because that's going to need to be removed. We're looking at more like deer type fencing that's metal. For example, you could potentially have a wood fence in some areas, but you'd need to have a fire break, meaning there would have to be a metal portion.
Yes.
So, thinking about how you're going to make these upgrades, what contractors are going to be available to do them, who has the knowledge of this information, what materials can be used, it's not super straightforward.
Right. Realistically, the heat of a fire is really, I'm just thinking, because I was talking to a home inspector recently who was poo-pooing this a little bit and saying, have you ever seen what happens to these houses in a really severe wildfire like they had in Palisades? You can have 5 feet on every house. The houses are gone. It doesn't
Especially
matter.
the ones that are Grizzly to Wildcat that are basically in the forest. Do we really think that having this Zone 0 mitigation fire attempt around it is going to stop a fire that's ripping through a forest? I think it's a very reasonable question and concern. I was just going to say, I do think there's a sentiment in the Berkeley Hills that if the city is going to make this potential Zone 4 the fire break for the entire city, it should also be a citywide responsibility for funding this fire break. If the city ostensibly benefits from it, the onus of complying shouldn't solely be on the people in Zone 4. That really feels sort of,
Right.
Not
so
fair.
are they going to propose some kind of a tax thing?
Good question. I mean, I made a suggestion, and I would love if this would actually happen in the city. Who's going to do it? If during escrow, when realtors were closing a transaction, that they could make a small contribution of whatever amount they wanted, $5, $50, $1,000, to a city fund that would help with some of these climate initiatives. Mm-hmm. So low-income people would have a fund to draw from. I know, I mean, we benefit from the housing and we make a fairly good living. I would love if we had a fund that made it really easy where you could just tell escrow, I want to give $50 of my commission to this program to help lower income people.
I think that's always a nice idea. And most of us realtors contribute to our community somehow.
Of course,
anyway.
Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that we don't, but I think to make it really easy to facilitate it.
Right. So you said June 17th?
Yes, that's when they're going to take the vote at the city council.
Okay, so when is the next opportunity, though, before then, that people can demonstrate their opposition?
Now.
Now.
I mean, it's ongoing.
Just now.
Contact the city or council people, give feedback.
Right. So if you're a Berkeley resident and you were unaware of this, or you're a realtor who works a lot in Berkeley and you were unaware of this, you need to get on the phone to your Berkeley people and have them talk to their council person. Because this is a big deal. And
Declan, there's informational sessions. And so there's going to be town halls in person and on Zoom. Okay. And so if you're curious about that or anyone wants some more information, they are doing a rollout of information so people can get up to speed and comment. Well, listen, this has been great. I wanted to keep it fairly brief because these are big things that people are now going to have to investigate themselves. And I did want to say, so let's go over the contact info for you. Great. And I will have it in the show notes. Of course I will. But let's just tell everybody where they can find you. My name is Megan Micco. I work at Compass Real Estate. My email is megan@meganmicco, MEGANMICCO. And my cell phone's 510-708-9952. You can find me in all the usual places, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and my own website. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and talking about this incredibly important stuff here that we have to deal with. Thank you for inviting me. Let me tell you about next week's podcast because it's going to be a little bit different, and you're invited. It's going to be in front of a live audience. David Gunderman hosts a series of conversations with agents at the Keller Williams office at 2089 Rose Street. And he invites a live audience. He calls this series of conversations Humble Beginnings. The audience is not limited to realtors or Keller Williams agents. Everybody is welcome. So I'm the next guest on his show. This is going to be at 2089 Rose Street in Berkeley on Friday, May 16th at noon. David's going to be throwing some questions at me, and I'll try and answer, and we'll see what happens. I'm going to record the conversation as well. I'm going to edit that down, and that's
Thank you, David. He's going to allow me to have that as the content for next week's podcast. Okay, all right, that said, let's do the closing credits. This episode was edited by me, with original music by Chuck Lindo and graphics by Lisa Mazer. The podcast is brought to you by the Home Factor Realtors, thehomefactor.com. Catch up on the latest news from the East Bay market in their weekly blog published every Saturday at thehomefactor.com. If you'd like to reach out to me with suggestions for the show, please text me at 415-446-8591. Catch you on the next podcast, everybody.